Today's story took place in Switzerland, in 2007. Ylenia Lenhard was 5.5 years old. She lived with her mother in the village of Appenzell. Ylenia was a cheerful and lively child. She enjoyed outdoor activities including climbing trees. One of her favorite activities was swimming at the nearby pool. July 31st was a beautiful day. The girl took her backpack, got on her scooter and rode to the pool building to pick up the things she had left behind earlier. She forgot to take her shampoo the day before. On the way back, the girl planned to buy herself something to eat at a nearby store. Charlotte, Ylenia's mother, waited for her daughter at home. When the girl did not show up, Charlotte notified the police. The woman feared that some kind of accident had happened to Ylenia. It never even crossed her mind that something much worse could have happened. But it soon turns out that no accident involving a girl of that age had occurred. The police established quite quickly that Ylenia did not make it to the pool or to the store. Therefore, all indications are that she was kidnapped from the pool area and that it happened around 9:20 a.m. The police launch a search operation, but come across no trace of the girl. On the same day, another event took place, which the police will only later link to Ylenia's case. After 1 p.m. in a forest near Oberburen, about 30 kilometers from Ylenia's home, 46-year-old Walter B. was shot by a male stranger. Walter gave the following account of events. He met an unknown man with whom he got into a friendly chat. After this conversation, the man suddenly started shooting at him with a revolver. Walter then began to run toward the road, stopped a passing car there, and a woman driving it took him to the hospital. Walter insists that he does not know the man, he only knows that the perpetrator came to the forest in a white minibus with Spanish license plates. At exactly 7:15 p.m., also in the forest, a few kilometers away, a white Renault Traffic minibus is found abandoned. From exactly this kind of car a few hours earlier, an unknown man had fired at Walter. The next day before noon, not far from the abandoned car, police found the body of its owner. It was 67-year-old Urs Hans von Esch, a Swiss who had lived with his wife in Spain since 1990. The man shot himself with a gun. A scooter and a helmet belonging to a child lay nearby. A shovel was also lying there. Police linked the case to Ylenia's case, as witnesses saw such a Renault Traffic near the pool building on the day she went missing. On the same day, a resident of Billwil, located near Oberburen, found a backpack with children's clothes inside near the forest. It doesn't look good. Unfortunately, a quick analysis showed that the man's car contained Ylenia's DNA, while von Esch's DNA was found on the girl's belongings. It is now clear that there is a close connection between the shooting and von Esch's suicide and Ylenia's kidnapping. It's just not clear exactly what kind. The search for Ylenia has continued. Police used helicopters and tracking dogs, divers searched bodies of water in the area, and a great number of people took part in the entire operation. Private individuals also helped in the search of the girl. The case was publicized in all media. Spanish police, along with colleagues from Switzerland, have searched the von Esch house in Spain. The house gave the impression of something like a fortress. Already on the front door hangs a sign with information, in 5 languages, that the house is protected by a so-called self-shooting device. Police officers, who find this information hardly credible, later determined that such a device was actually there, and that only a design error prevented shots from being fired from the gun. In one of the rooms there is a wire drawn at the height of a human neck. There are several self-made mini-machines in the house. In jars for preserves, dead chicks and lizards. There is also a chest full of toys and more than a dozen portrait photos of children. There was no indication that Ylenia had ever been there. After a week, investigators finished searching the property. Before moving to Spain, von Esch lived in Switzerland, including 14 years before moving out himself in a small village called Eiselisberg in the canton of Thurgau. In the second half of the 1980s alone, 10 children disappeared in the area, 5 of them from the cantons of St. Gallen and Thurgau. Throughout the years, beginning in the 1980s, von Esch traveled throughout Switzerland as a Foreign Service employee. From the testimonies of various people, he had 2 faces. He was regarded as likable and endearing, But some considered him a freak, a stubborn and clever man who secretly despises people. He had already served time for blackmail and threatening to abduct a child. Von Esch returned to Switzerland in early July. Just a few weeks before Ylenia's abduction, his wife testified that he wanted to find an apartment there. The media have not stopped speculating on why he needed a second apartment. In an interview with a magazine, his wife explains it as follows. Urs was looking for an apartment because he was fed up with the boring Spanish landscape. The environment was making him even more depressed. He longed for lush meadows and forests. Naturally, speculation did not cease after this explanation, with the still unsolved cases of disappearances and murders of children from the 1980s in the background. In the course of the investigation, police determined that Von Esch had prepared for the kidnapping. He had already purchased tape, rope and toluene 3 weeks earlier to be used as a narcotic. Ylenia was most likely a completely random kidnapping victim. As for Walter's connection to the case, Von Esch met him in the woods shortly after he murdered Ylenia. He considered Walter an inconvenient witness and tried to shoot him, and after he failed to do so, committed suicide. Weeks have passed. The case of Ylenia's disappearance still did not leave the headlines of news reports. It also appeared in crime programs. There was a high reward for help in finding the girl. The child was searched all that time by the police, the fire department, and a lot of private individuals. Unfortunately, it was still not known what happened to the girl. Although the more time passed, the worst possible scenario seemed more and more likely. Those days were a great nightmare, for which Ylenia's mother to this day still can't find words. However, the woman had to function somehow, especially since she was still taking care of 2 children belonging to her former partner. Ylenia did not formally have a father. She was a child conceived by in vitro method. Charlotte therefore did not have the support of the girl's father during this difficult time. Fortunately, her brother, who has 2 children about Ylenia's age, proved to be a huge support. On September 15, 6 weeks after Ylenia went missing, a hobbyist searcher came across the child's corpse in the woods near Oberburen. The corpse lay near the spot where Ylenia's garden shovel, scooter and helmet were found on August 1st. The attention of the searcher was drawn to a Spanish cigarette, but lying on the ground. The man looked around and noticed a suspicious-looking pile of earth nearby. He started digging with the shovel and immediately came across the child's body. The searcher immediately notified the police. Already after an initial inspection, it seemed certain that this was the corpse of the missing child Ylenia. Information about the discovery of a child's body in the forest immediately hit the media. Naturally, the question was immediately raised: why was the body found so late? The work of the police becomes the object of harsh criticism. After all, this part of the forest has been searched many times, also with the help of dogs. How is it possible that experienced officers with expert equipment were not able to find the child, but a private individual managed to do so? The police explained that the reason was that the body was buried in the ground, and only by digging up the ground by animals, it is possible to find the body. This happens quite often. The autopsy showed the presence of toluene in Ylenia's body. Toluene, a colorless liquid with a pleasant odor, is an organic chemical compound that is used as a raw material and solvent, among other things. There were no signs of sexual or physical abuse on the child's body. Doctors pointed to an overdose of toluene as the immediate cause of Ylenia's death. For Charlotte, finding her daughter's body was in some way a huge relief, because it meant the end of an unimaginable nightmare of uncertainty. The woman returned to work, she is a nurse, and tried her best to take care of the children. At her own request, she went with the police to the place where her child's body was found, and for the first 2 years she visited her daughter's grave every day. All this was important to her because it allowed her to cope better with the trauma. Charlotte also got a lot of support from complete strangers. Many letters of condolence, health wishes and words of encouragement arrived at her private address. Some of them contained money, even though Charlotte never asked for financial support. This gave her the idea to establish a foundation named after Ylenia. The foundation was established with the support of Charlotte's brother. During further investigation, The police were unable to determine exactly why von Esch murdered Ylenia. It was not possible to confirm that von Esch was involved in the abduction of other children, for example those who disappeared within a radius of only 30 kilometers from the place where Ylenia was abducted and where her body was found. Peter Pergesi disappeared in 1981, Peter Rothai and Edith Trittenbass in 1984. Moreover, it was not possible to determine with absolute certainty that von Esch was Ylenia's murderer. Naturally, everything points to this, but only one thing can be absolutely certain, that he kidnapped the girl. Formally, the case of Ylenia's murder remains unsolved. The suspicions that von Esch had something to do with the very famous disappearance in 2007 of 5-year-old British girl Madeleine McCann, who was on vacation in Portugal with her family, are also not confirmed. These assumptions appeared in the press shortly after the disappearance of the little British girl, as von Esch lived in Spain at the time, and the cases of Ylenia and Madeleine show similarities, for example in terms of the age and appearance of the victims. In 2013, British police clearly ruled out such a connection. In an interview given 10 years after Ylenia's death, Charlotte says that she has learned to better cope with the negative thoughts that still haunt her. Worst of all are the recurring questions: did Ylenia suffer? What was she thinking about in the last moments before her death? Charlotte feels great pain when she passes people on the street who went to kindergarten with Ylenia. It's hard for her to watch other children grow and change. She thinks about what Ylenia would look like today, what profession she would finally choose, because the girl always said that she would like to become a nurse like her mother. Over the years, Charlotte and the children have never shied away from talking about Ylenia. On the contrary, they often recall the moments spent together. Sometimes they talk loudly about how Ylenia would behave in a specific situation. There are still photos of Ylenia and drawings she made in the apartment for those closest to her. The girl is, in a sense, still present. The case of Ylenia's murder also had certain political repercussions, related to the debate on how both actually and legally to prevent crimes committed against children, and what steps to implement when there is a suspicion of such a crime. 2 years after the girl's murder, a special alarm system was implemented in Switzerland to be used in the event of child abduction. This system is coordinated on a national scale. When there is a suspicion, or certainty, that a child has been abducted, the system is activated. This means that within a few minutes, information about a kidnapping can be forwarded and announced on trains, at stations, and on electronic billboards on highways. Speculations about von Esch's connections with the disappearances of children in the 1980s appear in the media to this day, and there are many voices suggesting that he knew the serial killer Werner Ferrari, and perhaps even abducted Ylenia together with him. However, the police do not confirm these suspicions, and the prosecutor's office does not decide to reopen the investigation. And that's the end of this sad story. If you want more stories like this, please subscribe to my channel. Stay safe.